Now, I like to start with an amazing fact. I don't know if you've ever heard of Baron Fabian von Schierendorf. This fella here, you see his name on the screen? A very interesting story. He began as an attorney, born in 1907 in Germany. As the war broke out, because of his intelligence, they grabbed him and advanced him quickly through the German ranks. But he was a bright man, a religious man, and he recognized that Hitler was insane and that he was destroying Germany and much of Europe. He became part of the underground and the resistance, and eventually they discovered where he stood. He was captured, he was tortured, he would not tell them anything. They took him to a Nazi court and had a mock trial. They'd accused him of attempting to assassinate Hitler, which may have been true. They pronounced him guilty, and as they were marching him out to be executed, there was an air raid siren, and before people could even go to cover, a bomb made a direct hit on the courthouse. Everybody involved in the trial was killed, except Baron von Schierendorf. He survived, unhurt, and he managed to survive the war. Beyond that day, everything turned around. He came back and he served as a judge in the country that had condemned him to be executed. Lived until 1980. Talk about a reversal of fortune. You know, the Bible describes the day of the Lord. I think you probably find 35 times where this phrase or something similar is used in the Bible, and it's used to describe that last day of the world's history when probation closes for planet Earth and Jesus comes to rescue his people. He comes at a moment when it looks like they're about to be annihilated, but at the last moment the tables are totally turned and our enemies are destroyed and we are vindicated and rescued. Question number 1. What is the day of the Lord? I've got another verse, Isaiah chapter 2, verse 12. For the day of the Lord of hosts shall come upon everything proud and lofty, upon everything lifted up, and it shall be brought low. You see, at the end there's going to be a war. This day of the Lord is also synonymous with the Battle of Armageddon. And this Battle of Armageddon is not a war between China and Russia and the U.S. and Iran or anything like that. Finally, the whole world is going to be polarized into two groups. Those that believe in God and His Word and are willing to stand on the rock of truth, and those who follow the beast in His image and are following this man-made religion of traditions. When the world began, there were two brothers. They both claimed to worship the same God. They did it differently. One did it his way. He was not accepted by the Lord. One did it God's way. He was accepted. And the one who did it the wrong way persecuted the one who did it the right way. That is going to be repeated in the last days. Dragon was enraged with a woman, Revelation 12:17, and he went to make war with the rest of her offspring, who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus. This is God's church in the last days. There will be an all-out war against those who stand for the truth. I hope you're willing, friends, to stand on the rock of God's Word and not be afraid, because you will not stand alone. Jesus will stand with you. Revelation 13:7, it was granted him to make war with the saints. This is the last battle. It's not a political war. It's a spiritual war between those who worship God and follow His Word and those who don't. Revelation 17, verse 13 and 14. These are of one mind, and they will give their power and authority to the beast. These will make war with the Lamb. So that whenever anyone makes war with God's children, they're really making war with who? The Lamb. Jesus said, whoever touches you touches the apple of my eye. They'll make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them. But in this meeting, most Christians believe that Jesus is coming. Amen. Most Christians believe in the signs of the nearness of His coming. But there's a lot of confusion in the world out there regarding how Jesus is coming. And I'd like to take a moment and talk about that. Because if you do not only understand something about how He's coming, if Christ began telling us about His coming by saying, beware of false Christs and false prophets, He's telling us that there is going to be a major deception in the last days that will fool most of the world regarding His coming. Satan is going to impersonate Christ's coming. So one way we can guard against being deceived in that way is to understand something about how He's coming. Here's a slide that quickly illustrates it. In the last days, just prior to Christ's coming, there'll be a tribulation. It'll be 2 sections. It'll be a small time of trouble. Then probation closes. Big time of trouble. That's when the plagues fall. There'll be a death decree against God's people, just like you had in the book of Esther. But at the moment when it looks like God's people are going to be destroyed, the Lord comes to deliver us in the day of the Lord. The wicked are destroyed by the brightness of His coming. We are caught up to meet the Lord in the air. Then we spend 1,000 years living and reigning with Christ in the mansions He's prepared. Doesn't that make sense? He says, I go to prepare a place for you. He goes up. I'll come receive you to myself. We will be caught up to meet Him in the air. We go and live and reign with Him in eternity. And at the end of the 1,000 years, the New Jerusalem descends back down to earth. The meek inherit the earth. God punishes the wicked. There's the final judgment. He creates a new heaven and a new earth. So I'm giving you a very quick overview of those things. But especially in recent years, a scenario that used to be the exception has now become prevalent because people do not study for themselves. And folks want to believe whatever is sensational and popular. This whole Left Behind scenario that has been made so popular by a series of books by Tim LaHaye and Jerry Jenkins and made into a variety of movies has kind of taken the generic Christian church by storm. And because people are not really studying biblical theology and chronology, eschatology in depth, they're not digging deep and putting their roots down on the rock, they're being caught up in these fantasies. Now, let me tell you why this is so dangerous. It gives people the idea they can have a second chance. I've met people before who believe in the secret rapture theory. And a husband, for instance, will say, well, dear, I know you're going to church and you're telling me one of these days that you're just going to disappear. And have you heard folks say this before? Planes are going to crash, cars are going to crash. And he said, if you disappear, I might have to go through that 7 years of tribulation, but then at least I've got 7 years to get my act together. And I've met a lot of people that think, well, I'm going to wait and see if this rapture thing really happens. And if it happens, well, I'm not looking forward to the tribulation, but at least I get another chance. And the devil has developed this false theory because he loves it. It makes people think, I can just take it easy and wait and see if the rapture happens. You don't find Spurgeon and Wesley and Whitefield and the great reformers believing this nonsense. Pardon me, friends. I don't want to be derogatory or unkind, but I hate to see folks deceived, and the devil is setting people up. The tribulation happens first. God does not save His church from tribulation. He saves it through tribulation.